local energy sharing simulator, and I'm really excited to show you how to open and run our second beta. Now this is a really interesting improvement on our last version. It's got both the Mike and the Luke and Naomi models in. So the first step to opening up the program is downloading the energy sharing zip file from the link. Now if you double click that, it'll unzip to whatever folder you downloaded it to. And you'll get a folder coming out of it, energy sharing. So double click on that, and inside here there are a few things. This readme first is good to have a little squiz at, but basically all the steps covered in this are in this video. But what you want to go for is this energy sharing.command, and this is a really special little program that both opens up the energy sharing user interface app, but it also opens up the special calculator that's doing all the energy manipulation and calculations in the back end. So the way to open up the program is to just double click on this energy sharing.command, and what you'll see is a big window like this will pop up, and here you'll have energy sharing simulator. So we'll go ahead and click here and click Get Started. Now the program opens up with two choices. You can either use the apartment model by Mike Roberts or the Luomi model, which is by Naomi Stringer and myself, Luke. So I'm going to take you through really quickly how this program works, and we'll use the apartment model as the example because that's the more complex one. The idea with this is that you work your way down through these various options to build your simulation until you get to the review section. You review it and then you run it, and you'll view your results in the results section. So the first option is to be able to upload load and solar data. So it actually comes pre-bundled with a number of example load profiles, and these are basically just CSV files, kind of like Excel files that have energy and data in them, either from solar or load. So I'll just show you an example of one. So it's a CSV file, and the first column needs to be called timestamp, and it's just got these timestamps, and they're in the day, month, year format. And we'll supply a couple of these on the site for you to have a look at. And then you can have any number of columns following the timestamp with a label and energy data in kilowatt hours down the column. So the idea is when you start playing with this program, you can just use the ones that are already uploaded into the program. But if you want to add one, you can click on Select File, and you're able to just go and upload your own data to run your own simulation. So you select the file, you hit Start Import. This one actually had incorrectly formatted timestamp in it, so it'll basically scream at you if you don't have the right type of data in your file. So we can go through and now go to solar data for the same thing. And now we get to arrangement, and this is where the really interesting fun stuff starts. So this is where we start setting up our scenario, our simulation that we might want to run. So Mike's model has a lot of different options here. You can select from among just simple embedded networks to situations where various individuals has solar system, and there's a common shared solar system. There are shared battery scenarios and various financial arrangements around these as well. So some with power purchase agreements behind the meter, some without. And you can refer to some of Mike's previous papers and documentation, which we'll link to on the site, to understand which of these scenarios you might want to run. So you can select any one you want. I'm just going to select behind the meter PPA for the moment. And the next step is to select your input data. So to do this, you'll see selected load file and selected solar file are blank. to do this, we click on Configure Data Sources, and we come up with a choice of our load file and our solar file. So these are those files that we were uploading, and we'll now get the choice of all the ones that have been uploaded. So I'm just going to go for load profiles demo, and this is, when you first run the program, a really good place to start because it's just a short little example of how the program runs. So I'm going to click on load profiles demo, and I'm going to select my solar file as solar profiles demo, and you'll see here that it builds a timeline of these two data sets. So these ones are actually the same length, and you can see that they go from the 26th of February 2017 just until the 28th of February 17. But say, for example, I chose a different one. It shows that the load profiles, that just ran for those two short, for that short time period, compared to the solar, which goes from the 26th of February all the way to the 23rd of April. So this lets you see how long your simulation is going to run. So in this instance, the simulation is only going to run for this small amount of time because that's all the crossover there is between these two files. So I'm just going to go back to the demo. Now, here you've got the choice of set or set and autofill. And I recommend that when you first run this program, you click set and autofill. And what this does is it looks at all the profiles in those load files and all the profiles in the solar files, and automatically creates residences or participants in your network and assigns them those profiles. So I'm going to just click set and autofill. So here you can see what's happened is it's added a number of participants, in this case 11 participants, and they've been automatically configured to read their load and solar data from the different profiles in those Excel files that you uploaded. So, for example, in the Excel file, we have profile 1, so participant 1, and we can call this whoever we want. We can call it Luke or whoever we want. We'll call it participant 1, has been assigned profile 1 of the load data and profile 1 of the solar data, but we could change that if we wanted, right? And here we also have the option of configuring what type of tariff they use. So at the moment, that's the user interface configured tariff, which is the one that's going to be configured in the next screen, the tariff screen. But also, you can choose from a number of available included tariff options, and we'll provide some information about what those tariffs are and how they work. So now that we've created a participant and we've automatically created all these participants and we've configured the load and solar data, we can just have a look at actually what that profile looks like by clicking the Show Data button. And so what this does is it just brings up a chart of that participant's solar and load. So you can see here this person's solar data, it's an incredibly small system, whereas their load's quite large. So maybe that's not a great match that I just selected, but it'll do. Here you can also remove participants if you want. Additionally, you can set profiles for a central solar system that's shared among participants, common property, solar, and load. And the way these work depends on which arrangement you've selected. And again, it's best to refer to Mike's documentation to really understand how those are going to work for you. Okay, so once you've set up your arrangement, and that is basically how the energy is going to flow, where the data is coming from, and who the participants are, and where each individual participant's data is coming from, participants being residences in an apartment block in this case, we can now move on to tariffs. So on this screen, we get the option to configure what tariffs participants might be facing in this system. So we've got the imports tariff, so this is energy imported. We've got solar imports, so that's charged on solar that's imported within the system, and an export tariff to the network. And again, the meaning of these is somewhat dependent on the scenario that you're modeling. But the way these work is there are, for example, in this tariff, there are 3 periods. So there's this low tariff, and then it seems to peak, and then there's another sort of off-peak tariff. So we can change the times that these tariffs kick in by moving these sliders. We can change the rates of these tariffs by, you see this says period 1, and I've just changed it to 10 cents a kilowatt hour from 20. And we can also add time periods, right? So I've just added a new time period, and we can make this whatever price we want, right? And it automatically adjusted. And so with this, you can configure really complex tariffs that your participants are exposed to, and model the financial outcomes from those tariffs being applied. So you can really dig into these. But additionally, there are a number of daily block tariffs you can configure. So these can be added in addition to the tariffs above. So this is basically a rate for a certain number of kilowatt hours in a period, and what that the threshold is. So this tariff would be applied for all kilowatt hours up to, for example, the first kilowatt hour consumed, and so on. So these would be applied in addition to these time of use tariffs. And obviously, if you don't want them to operate, you can just set the rates to 0. Additionally, you can configure metering services charges and solar charges, and we'll look at expanding this with added complexity as we learn more about your needs for modeling. Additionally, you can configure batteries. So you've got 2 choices for any given battery. There is a central battery that you can configure. If you leave these blank, no central battery will be added to the system, but if you configure them, it'll be added automatically. So I'm going to select a Powerwall 2, 1 kilowatt hour, and I'm going to select this dispatch strategy. Now, again, if you want to learn more about these, I urge you to look into Mark's papers that is published on this model. For some additional information on the battery, you can click here and see battery information. It tells you the capacity of each of these batteries, max charge kilowatt hours, the cycle efficiency, etc. Additionally, you can add a battery to any given participant. So, for example, I want to give one to participant 1 here. So I'm going to select one of these battery types and a dispatch strategy. But additionally, I can say how many kilowatt hours I want it to be. So for the central battery, it's got to be whatever it's configured to. So, you want the Powerwall 2, well, that's going to be 13.2 kilowatt hours. But for the participants, you get the option to tell them what the capacity of their battery is. Okay, so now that that's all configured, we click on Review, and we can just see a very brief review of the participants we've added and who we've assigned to what. Now it's time to click Run Model. And so what happens is it runs. Mike's model runs really quickly. The Luomi model runs a little bit slower. And they give you slightly different levels of detail and slightly different details. So it depends what you want to model as to which model you might choose. So we come out with a summary table of a whole lot of different kind of metrics for the performance of the network. We can go and look at how much money each participant made. It looks like participant 1 in this case, because we gave them a sweet battery, just made an absolute killing. But that's just an artifact of how I configured it. And you can also look at the total solar bills and total customer bills. So this changes a lot depending on how you configure the system. Additionally, you can hit download, and what will happen is you'll have the file with all of this information appear in your downloads folder in your computer. You can also save and load scenarios. So, for example, if all of this configuration, all the work that you put into configuring your tariffs and your arrangement, you can save that, and it'll again save to the downloads folder. And then you can, at a later date, open up the program, select one of those profiles that you've saved, and it'll load it back up, and you'll be able to run that simulation again. And if you want to start again, you can always come back here and click the clear button. I'll very quickly take you through Luomi model. So it's very similar in that you go through and you configure your load and solar data. The arrangements are a lot simpler. So there's no option to choose the different scenarios. Luomi model is the one kind of hybrid embedded network scenario that we've modeled in the couple of papers that have been written. Of course, this started out as a tool to model the Byron Bay Arts and Industrial Estate, and we've moved from there into making it a general purpose tool. So I've automatically configured these participants. We can go in and in a very similar way modify the way tariffs work, except in the Luomi model, there's kind of these three price bands that you can manipulate. And in the Luomi model, you have a slightly more fine-grained ability to modify the network tariffs. We've kind of split out the GEOS and NUOS charges. And some options for configuring local solar and central battery tariffs. Additionally, you can configure how big you want the central battery to be. And we can review, see how everything's working, and click Run Model. Now, you can see it takes quite a bit longer. And we'll let it run. What the Luomi model does give you is a time series of how each participant has been performing in the network. So you can dig down and analyze exactly the energy flows between each participant. So the retail revenue, this is across the 2 days we've modeled. You can go in and have a look at the bills of each participant in each half hour. The total revenue for each participant, energy generated and consumed, and the flows of energy in and out of the system. And again, you can also download the results and analyze them. And similarly, you can always go back and save and load. Okay, so that probably brings us back to the end of the tour of the model. I recommend that you probably start off with the apartment model, have a play around. And just use the sample data in the system. And then when you're ready, build your own data sets up, upload them. And we're really excited to see what you can do with this model. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. Okay. What would be really helpful for you to do if something does go wrong in the model. So as we're in beta, there are still a few bugs to iron out, and we'd really appreciate your help in tracking them down. So what happens when you boot up this program is actually there are two things happening. The first is this big window comes up with your user interface. The second, if we look, is this terminal has opened. And this is basically the calculator that's doing all the back-end calculations of how the energy flows are going. Now, normally, you really don't have to worry about this. It just needs to sit there and run in the background and receive the messages from what you click on. But if something goes wrong, the text that appears in here would be really, really helpful to us to figure out what's going on. So if you could take a screenshot of that, and on a Mac, that's Command-Shift-4, or if you could just select the last few lines like that and copy them and send them to us, that would really, really help us in understanding and tracking down any problems you might have. And the best place to help us out would be to post your issues to our GitHub page. Now, the GitHub page is github.com/luke-marshall/energy-sharing, and I'm certain that you've got the link for that. We're probably actually going to move this from my personal page to the SEAM GitHub page very shortly, but it'll be up there and it'll be really, really easy to find. When you're in GitHub, and I understand that many of you may not have been on this page before, but it's got some really great features for managing bugs in software. So when you reach the energy sharing page, and there are, if you scroll down, a bunch of instructions and screenshots and additional notes on this page, but at the top of the page there's an issues button, and if you click on the issues button, there's a form that you can fill out that'll send us a notification. So if you create a new issue, give it a title, and leave a comment. If you could paste the last few lines of that in, and also just leave us a message. Something went wrong. Please be more descriptive than that. And click on Submit New Issue. That would be really, really helpful. We can work through that issue. We can use this as the forum to discuss it with you. And we can make sure we can actually keep track of when bugs are reported. So we'd really appreciate your help with that. Additionally, from this energy sharing page, our releases will be up here. So at the moment we're on beta release 2. We're planning to put out a few more of these in the next couple of weeks as we fix bugs, make new versions that are more compatible with various other operating systems. So keep an eye on this page. It's the center of where everything's being posted for the project. Cool. So look, thank you very much for your time, and we're looking forward to working with you to help you model your emerging business systems for local energy sharing. Thanks.